girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, SL1 Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And a real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm bringing you today. I am talking to a fellow veteran and new friend of mine, Army Veteran John Stieben. What's going on, John?
Bill, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. So thankfully, our mutual friend Chris Akins got us connected. I know we're going to get into some good Chris Akins stories sometime through this conversation here. But usually, when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So, do you remember as a kid what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
Believe it or not, I wanted to be an attorney.
You wanted to be an attorney,
Perry
huh?
Mason. I did. I watched Perry Mason as a kid, and I really wanted to be a lawyer.
Nice. Not Ben Matlock though. It was more Perry Mason, huh?
Perry Mason. That's how old I am. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then, when was it that you felt the calling to serve your country?
I was 16 years old, and I lived in North Carolina. And my cousin was stationed at Fort Bragg. He was part of the 82nd Airborne Division. He and I were really, really close, 13 months apart in age. And we vacationed together as kids. So he's like a brother to me. And he joined the Army out of high school. And when I saw him, I picked him up at a bus depot in Williamston, North Carolina. And he had on his dress greens, and he has blouse jump boots and his maroon beret. And I thought, man, he looked so sharp. And he started telling me stories about what he'd been doing and training and whatnot. And I decided, yeah, I don't want to go to college. I want to do this. So nice, he's the one that planted the seed.
Nice. And then, you said you've grown up, North Carolina?
Yes.
What was like some of the oddest things that you experienced then when you signed up and first joined the Army?
Well, I think one of the first things that stands out is I had to pay for my very first haircut in the Army.
They made you pay for it, huh?
they literally shaved my head and charged me $3.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't expect I'd have to pay for it. Luckily, the day I went in the Army, I had $5 in my wallet. That's all I had. I literally had $5 in my name.
Yeah, then you had some IOUs then, huh?
Yeah.
You had to pay for through push-ups or something?
Yeah, luckily I didn't smoke or anything, so I was a pretty low maintenance guy.
Gotcha. And then tell me about what the culture was like coming from where you grew up. You paying for your first haircut and then experiencing boot camp for the first time.
Yeah, so where I grew up, everybody either went to a 4-year college after high school or they joined the military. That seemed to be the only two options. North Carolina wages are quite low, and so joining the military, again, wages are low there too. It really wasn't much of a stretch for a lot of us. And for those of us who did not want to go to college right out of high school, it really did seem like the best option for me. So, going through the process of enlisting, testing, the physical, getting a job, picking out an MOS, it took a while. And then finally, when I did leave for basic training, I arrived in South Carolina at the airport, Columbia, and they just told us to sit down and wait for everybody else. And then they loaded up the bus. And what really stands out strongly in my mind is we arrived at a little bit after midnight to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. They purposely bring you in the middle of the night. They feed you a steak dinner, and then they take you to this room called the amnesty room. And I'm sure every branch has something similar, where get rid of anything you have that might get you in trouble. So if you, for example, brought drugs, why would you? But you could get rid of them, and there's no questions asked. And literally, it's like confession in a Catholic church. You just go in this room by yourself, and there's a box you put. So I had a deck of cards, so I figured I'm going to get rid of these cards because probably going to get me in trouble. So, and then they just started doing the processing, and we were up till probably 3 a.m. You spend about 4 days at the reception station, where you get your haircut, you get all your immunizations, you get your uniforms. They teach you how to march, how to stand, and so forth.
Yeah, I remember the amnesty box too. So that brings back some memories. Yeah. And then what was it? I would say, without like breaking OPSEC, was one of the worst places that you served at during your time in?
Well, Fort Bragg's not exactly my favorite place, even though it is in North Carolina. I mean, honestly, probably the worst place would be Iraq, but even that wasn't that bad. So I was fortunate enough, I didn't get posted in the States at some undesirable location. I was stationed in the mountains in Maryland up by Camp David, and it was absolutely a beautiful place. And I really, really enjoyed my time there. So, and all the training stuff I went to, I got to go to, good places. And it's always the thing I always remembered about life, and I still maintain this to this day. If you don't like your situation in life, then change it. But if you can't, just remember it's temporary. Everything is temporary when you think about it. Yeah. So I've never been one to get too wrapped up in the moment. I'm a very, very low, I don't want to say low energy, but it takes a lot to get me upset. It takes a lot to get me wound up. And so, and I think a lot of that came from serving in the Army. There's a saying now, these young guys say, embrace the suck. And we didn't have that when I was in, but it's true. I mean, there's going to be moments you don't like, right? And my recruiter was so honest with me, and I hear stories about recruiters lying. No, mine was totally honest. He said, basic training is going to be no fun. AIT will be a little bit of fun. And then you get to your duty station, and it's like having a job. And Sergeant Quam was absolutely right about all of it. So I got great advice right from the beginning. So.
No, that's good. That's that's a rarity, an honest recruiter. So, and then what would you say is like your pet peeve, I guess, for lack of a better word, with civilians since transferring out of the military, transitioning out?
I would say just the lack of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
As you know, the military instills that in each one of us, that you have to be responsible for yourself and usually the people next to you as well. And I see a lot of civilians, and I saw a lot of this in my career in law enforcement, just cannot or will not accept personal responsibility for what they do. And as a police officer, it drove me crazy. I've instilled this in my children, that you are responsible for everything you do.
Yeah, I was just having that discussion earlier today with my significant other, and yeah, it is definitely it's a different world. I get called a boomer by her all the time, because of how I was raised, because I'm much older than her too, but how I was raised, and then my suggestions for things with her kids. And yeah, you know, that personal accountability is huge no matter where you go. And I have that with my kids too. You know, it's like some days, you know, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, it can be tough. I was a single dad for a number of years, and, you know I didn't always do it right, but I tried, you know, doing the best I could with what I had, you know.
And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And then what is something that you always carry with you from your time of service?
The friends. The friends was probably the best part of being in the military. I still talk to guys from basic training, and that was 1986. I still see these guys. I talk to them. I text them. The friendships that were made in the military are so different than friends that you meet outside of it. And even if you meet somebody like I meet you, we didn't serve together, but there's already a connection.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for people who never served in the military because they'll never know what that feels like.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And then what's like, what do you feel is like one of the funniest stories you could share from your time of service?
Oh man. I think, boy, I wasn't
there's quite a few.
Yeah. Good grief. Funniest things. Maybe we'll come back to that one. I at the moment, I can't think of anything like really, really funny. Okay, no, I got one. So I'm over in Japan for 3 weeks for military exercises, and one of the guys in my unit was half Japanese. So we went out in the village, and we ended up in a pachinko parlor. Yeah, I've never played pachinko. I played pinball as a kid, but so we go into this pachinko parlor, and I put some yen, I think it's like yen over there, in the machine, and I'm pressing the button, and all of a sudden, this light goes off on top, this siren. I'm thinking, oh, I think I won something. And all these, you know, ball bearings fall out of it, you know, round metal steel balls. And it's just big bucket of them. And so this guy comes over that works there, and he takes the bucket, and he goes over and he puts it on a scale. And then I have to go over to a counter and pick out a prize. And so my friend is with me, and he's explaining how this works because I don't know. And I said, no, can I get money? And so my friend said something to the guy in Japanese. And so then the guy reaches down under the counter, and he pulls out 4 ink pens, and they're all in different colored sleeves, protective sleeves. And he hands them to another guy, and the guy says, like, you know, follow me. So we go outside, down the street, into this alley, through this nondescript door. And as soon as you go through the door, there's a stairwell, and it's damn near as steep as a ladder, okay? And we go up there, we turn, we go down this hallway, and I'm thinking, are we getting ready to get robbed? I mean, what is going on? So it's me, my buddy, and this other guy, right? So and then he walks down the hall, and there's like no doors. And then there's a window about halfway down this dimly lit hallway, and he knocks on this window, and the window looks like what you'd see at an old train station in the 1800s, right? With kind of an arch thing. And so he knocks on it. This piece of wood slides open. There's a slot about this big. He slides the pins in. The guy closes the thing. And then about 2 minutes later, the guy opens the window again and shoves out all this paper money. And then I was like, okay, we're not going to get robbed. We're not going to get robbed. It was the strangest thing. I've never seen anything like that before.
So it's like, does that mean like you won or something and you're getting cashing out? Like that?
Yeah, exactly. But you have to go to a different location. They will not cash you out at the pachinko parlor. It's against the law. Technically, the whole thing is against the law. What happened, but it just happens, right? It's kind of like prostitution in Thailand. Technically not legal, but it happens, and nobody looks at it. You know.
Yeah. Hey, they got to earn a living over there too, you know.
Yeah, we got a good laugh out of that one though, because I hadn't traveled a lot, and other than like for the military, and I've never been to Asia before, and I don't know how this works, but yeah, it was pretty. We got a good laugh out of that. So
nice. And then what is one of your greatest hopes for the country that you've been willing to give your life for?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? I saw something recently and it really struck me as profound. And it said, if you want to thank me for my service, be the kind of citizen worth fighting for. And it's very simple, but it's very meaningful to me. I love this country. Obviously, I served it. Almost 8 years in the military and then another 26 in law enforcement. I take my citizenship as with great privilege. But with that also come, with the rights we get, come responsibilities. And I wish more people would take that seriously and understand that rights are given, but they are also removed. I had a conversation with a neighbor about that during COVID, and he was so willing to give up his freedom and his liberty in order to feel more secure. And I tried to explain to him that the problem is when you do that, you're giving up my rights as well. And that's where I say no. I don't subscribe to that thought.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is like, when you give them up, it's a lot harder to get them back. Usually
Very true.
It involves usually involves bloodshed.
Yep.
And they don't think about those things. And I'm in the same boat with you. I went through the same thing during that time period. That's why me and Chris are so tight.
I really, my hope, Bill, going through COVID and all of that it entailed was that we would come out of this as a nation a better, stronger place, kind of like after 9/11. And I remember this distinctly after 9/11 because I was still on the job, and you would see American flags everywhere on vehicles, on front of houses and businesses. And I thought to myself, this is great, but I hate to be negative. This is going to last about 6 months. And sure enough, after about 6 months, you started seeing less and less of the flags, less and less patriotism displayed. And I was hoping that COVID would do something to unite us and bring us closer together. But in fact, it did just the opposite. With the different rules in different communities, different understanding of what a pandemic is and how to respond to it, it literally drove us even further apart, if that were even possible. So I was actually sad about it. I personally did not suffer through COVID. I relished the time with my family. We made new friends in our neighborhood. It was a net positive for my family anyways, absent losing a cousin and an uncle. But other than that, it was not a horrible experience like it was for a lot of people. I'm grateful for that.
And you were talking about how COVID, it seemed like going back to 9/11, yeah, we were all together, but unfortunately, it didn't last. And then COVID, you would think was something else that would bring us all together, but it seemed, I could go down so many rabbit holes of like psyops, psychological operations on the American people, man. And that gets me in trouble talking sometimes, thinking outside the box and talking about that stuff on the podcast here. But Chris wouldn't have it any other way. So, but I think that another thing that, our military mindset and military training benefits us compared to our civilian counterparts is that we're aware of these type of things. We worked in things like this. So then when we're seeing, it's easier for us to kind of see the things in front of us happening and, but that's a whole nother episode. My next question though, going back to, psychological things and our struggles with mental health and PTSD. And what do you feel we could do to break the stigma of that?
Well, I think they're doing a better job. From what I understand, they're doing a better job now through the VA and other community resources. There shouldn't be a stigma attached to anything regarding mental health. There's a lot of people who live their life just one small incident away from falling off the precipice of normalcy. And, again, I saw a lot of this in law enforcement, and it's really sad to me because nobody chooses to have mental health problems, and it's more common than people realize or are willing to talk about. Like I said, there should be no shame in it. If you need help, you should get help. There are resources out there, especially for us veterans. People just need to own up to it and realize that they can live a better life if they seek and get help.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the days of just throw some dirt on it, you know, we're getting away from that, where it's like, it's like men aren't supposed to show like emotions, but that, you know, that is not, you know, that's non-sustainable, you know, and now we're in a place where we can finally start talking about these things. And so I am happy of where we're headed when it comes to that, you know, because I know my dad was a World War II Marine, invasion Okinawa, you know, he came home and they didn't talk about it. They just went to work, and, you know, there were days that it came out of nowhere, you know, and I dealt with it, you know, and I never understood that until I went and served myself, you know, and then I'm kind of grateful because then it gave me more empathy for my dad, and my relationship with him was so much better before he passed. But I also had, you know, the resources that he didn't have, so I could get to that place of healing and understanding too. So, you know, definitely feel like we've come a long way with that for sure.
I agree.
And then, you know, you mentioned law enforcement a few times, and I definitely want to get into, you know, post-military career, but, you know, I would be remiss, you know, because we've mentioned him a few times, if I didn't hit you up for a Chris Akins story during your time of service.
All right. So 1990, it's summertime, and Chris is stationed at Fort Ord, California, and he's the admin specialist for the Light Fighter Academy. The Light Fighter Academy teaches the Army's air assault school. They teach other leadership things right there on base. And so he said, hey, if you want to come down, at the time I was in the Army Reserve and going to college, he said, if you want to come down, I'll get you a spot at air assault school. And I said, really? Okay. I said, come on, let's do it together. He said, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. I said, why not? You can do it. He goes, no, you don't understand. I know all the cadre. They will mess with me relentlessly. No, I can't do it. But he said, you can come down and stay at my house. So I went down and I stayed with Chris and Georgetta. This was before they had children. She was actually pregnant with their daughter. And so, of course, we were drinking in the afternoon on a Saturday, I think it was. And she got mad at him and he got mad at her. And then he stormed outside. So I went out with him, and he's living in an apartment building, right? And they had the split rail fence around it. And Chris just got so angry, and he grabbed one of these split rails and he just started banging it really hard on the ground in the parking lot. And I was like, Chris, knock it off, man. You got to draw attention here. Well, he did. So next thing you know, I see a police car pull up, and I start running for the apartment. And I said, Chris, the cops are here. Come on. And they yelled, stop. And we ran, and I jumped over the back of the couch. I'm sitting there like, nothing happened. All of a sudden, the officers walked in, and they started yelling at us. And we told you to stop. And I said, look, my friend is drunk. He's upset. You know, we didn't mean any harm. And so finally, the police just said, okay, keep it quiet. I don't want to come back. And yeah, I thought we were going to jail for sure. And I didn't even do anything. I was just trying to get him to calm down. But
it makes so much more sense now too, you know, because like when we first started connecting and hanging out, it was in the music scene here in Cleveland, and you know, he would always get the dump button put on him when he start raging out on the radio and stuff like that, you know. And I remember, I think he had an email that was like "rich with hatred" or something, you know. So, you know,
yes,
he's in a much better place now. But yeah, it's been a journey of a lot of like pent up rage and aggression with that guy. But you know, he's come a long way. I'm proud to call him a friend, man.
As am I.
He's definitely, you know, when I came back from my last deployment and going through, you know, a lot of the changes and you know, I got sober. So then I had to, I mean, you know, I'm 15 years sober now, but the problem with getting sober is, you know, I start feeling my emotions again. You know, they say that the good thing is you start feeling again. The bad thing is you start feeling again. And I got to process those in a healthy way. And I still don't always get it right, as you know, earlier with my dog barking, but you know, I'm still working on it, you know. And then so like I said, we talked about, you mentioned law enforcement a couple times, but you know, what was you know, when you were done with your service in the Army, you know, was that the immediate plan, or you know, what was that transition out like for you?
So actually, when I was in Desert Storm, when we were all done in the field, we went back to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, to Khobar Towers, and we were just waiting for our turn to fly back home. And so we were there for a couple months, getting our equipment ready and cleaned and all that stuff. And the first sergeant asked me, he said, "What are you going to do when you get back?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to finish college." And originally my plan was I was going to get my degree and go back in as an officer. But I decided, now, one war is enough. I don't want to press my luck. I want to do something else. And he said, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm probably going to apply to law school." He said, "Law school? No, you should be a cop."
So, but Perry Mason.
A cop? What? I don't even know any police officers. I did not grow up in a law enforcement family. He said, "Go talk to the company commander." So our company commander was a Secret Service agent, and this guy was larger than life. His name was,
wow,
no joke, King Francis Davis Jr. That was the guy's name. That's a big name to live up to.
Oh, yeah.
This guy had done personal work for President Reagan, and he worked undercover in counterfeiting in LA. I mean, this guy was like a movie star. And he starts telling me stories, and I went, whoa. And I always assumed police officers make very little money, and because where I grew up, they didn't make very much money. So I decided I was going to be a federal agent at that point. And so I finished my degree. I started applying, and in the early 90s, it was a really tough time to get hired because of a lot of hiring freezes and whatnot. So I just took the first job I could find, and that happened to be at a sheriff's department here in the state of Washington, a town where I had lived when I was little before we moved to Carolina. And so I spent 3 years with the sheriff's office. So I literally finished the Army in October of '93. I finished college 2 months earlier at the University of Washington, and 6 months later, I was in a police academy. And so it was a very smooth and easy transition for me. And law enforcement is a paramilitary organization. I mean, you think about it. They teach you how to march and how to do this and do that. You got to follow the rules, and there's a code of conduct. And so that's why you see so many veterans that pick up the badge and continue to serve in another fashion. So it was a very easy transition for me.
Yeah, gotcha. And then you know, coming out of the military, then getting into the law enforcement, how much time did you do there before you transition to what you're doing right now?
26 years to the day.
So you got another retirement, or got a retirement through law enforcement. Okay. And then like what kind of led you into doing and then you know, just explain what you're doing now, and then what led to that for you.
Okay, so when I retired, it was March 1st of 2020. It was 2 weeks before COVID started, and I was interviewing for a position in corporate security at the Gates Foundation in Seattle. And then all of a sudden, everything got shut down. Everybody was sent home, so they no longer needed to fill the job. And so I played golf 4 days a week for several months, and I just started getting bored, and I kept looking at this one particular company that I had heard about because I had friends that had gone there from the police department. And the day that they opened up for applications to be received, I submitted my resume. They called me within 90 minutes. The next day I was interviewed, and they hired me. And so what I do now is I do corporate security work in the form of secure logistics, like courier work. I'll grab something and fly around the country and deliver it and fly home. I do executive protection. I do executive driving, where we have VIPs that are in town and they need to be driven and protected. And I also do escorting of engineers, which is very similar to what I just said. They're out in the field testing equipment and they need protection and somebody to run interference if there's a problem. And these are very sensitive devices with the intellectual properties and whatnot. So that's what I mainly do now.
Now, I've been familiar with a program out there called like Vet to CEO. I don't know if it's anything that you're familiar with, but it helps veterans like when they go into like their own private businesses. Sounds like what you're doing a little bit, that with loans and getting you government contracts and stuff like that. Is that anything that you were involved with, or?
No, actually, no. I signed on as a W-2 employee of this company based out of LA. We have offices all over the United States, also in one in Mexico and a couple in Brazil. It's an extremely professional organization. I work with quality people. For the role that I have, they only hire retired or currently serving police officers. And so I get to work with fantastic people. The clients are great. Our management, I can't say enough nice things about them. It's a 180 from law enforcement. In law enforcement, you show up at somebody's house, they're not happy to see you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're there to break up the party, you're there to arrest somebody, or you're there to take a report of a crime that they're a victim of. Well, this job, when I go deliver something to somebody, they are happy to see me. Or when I go pick up something from them to take back to the warehouse, again, they're happy. They're thanking me. They're so grateful. It's night and day from law enforcement. That's why I like doing it. Plus, as you can probably tell, I'm a people person. I like to talk. I like to interact with people. And sitting home during COVID, other than playing golf, was just, I need to feel productive.
Yeah.
And this job allows me to do that. So basically, what I tell people is I'm semi-retired. I retired from law enforcement, but I still work about 1,000 hours a year just because I like having something to do and feeling like I'm still productive and I'm still engaging with other people.
I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, because that's, but it's part of why I do this podcast, but getting paid sounds a lot more fun though. I'm not really getting paid much for this, but for, what we were talking about earlier, I know for me, it's been more like just that, that mental health aspect, and getting these stories out there and having these conversations, it's like, getting sober, I also had to learn how to like reconnect and have normal conversations with people without, my numbing agents and stuff. But I'm getting better and into a place lately that I've been like, I got to go do some more stuff. And, the economy is kind of guiding me towards like, okay, I got to find some paid gigs too, So yeah. I'm feeling you, man. And it's funny too, I was just, when you mentioned that you were originally applying for the Gates Foundation, and then everything that went down that we had to deal with COVID, that could have been quite interesting, Did you start working there?
I think it would have been. Yeah. Well, but, I'm a firm believer that everything works out the way it's supposed to in life. And that's just kind of my personal mantra. I used to get upset when things didn't go my way, or I would get really, really frustrated. But I'll tell you, I look back on those moments and I think, oh, that was a waste of energy. So I don't do that anymore. I learned in law enforcement too, you put in for certain things and sometimes you don't get them. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. And you just have to be able to accept disappointment and not let it bother you or not let it take the wind out of your sails. So I think with that kind of an attitude in life, that's probably why I'm happy. And I like my life. I like what I do. I like the people around me. And a lot of that came from the time in the military. Think about all the things you did in the Navy that you didn't like. I'll tell you one of my pet peeves: standing in line. I do not like standing in line. I don't know anybody who likes it, but no, like I really don't like it. Okay. But in life, sometimes you have to stand in line.
Oh yeah.
You just
And
have
like
to accept it.
Yeah. And like you were saying too, it's like, you know, we don't always get what we wanted, but when you look back, when you're looking at it in the rear view, you know, you probably avoided something that would have been worse, you know, by not getting, you know, sometimes we always get what we're supposed to, you know, have, you know.
Well,
I don't know,
yeah.
like I'm a person of faith, and I try and lean more because especially like going back to COVID and the uncertainty we were all dealing with. When I let fear win, I am not thinking clearly, you know. I am not productive. I am like I'm like your neighbor, like, you know, signing away all of our rights and stuff if I live in a fear-based thing. But when I lean more on faith, you know, and you know, that's where my recovery program helped me during that time, is I had the Serenity Prayer I was saying constantly, you know, and it's just like, what do I have control over with this whole situation? And then that's when it gets, you know, it's like, it's not like I guess passive, like, you know, if there's a fight that needs to be had, that's a righteous fight, you know, I'll get ready to do what is necessary for that righteous fight. But if it's if it's just a fight I'm creating that I don't need to be involved in, that's where the Serenity Prayer comes in mind, you know. And I'm like, I've been learning that since I've been dating again, you know. I gotta start stepping back and picking my battles.
I think once we realize how little control we have over so much of our lives, that's when we find a certain level of peace in that, and happiness comes with that. I realized early on that my career in law enforcement, I'm not in control of it. I'm always asking for things, or I shouldn't say always, but you know, like you put in for a promotion, you put in for a transfer to a special assignment. And like I said, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. And other people are going to determine your path. And I also believe in the change one thing, change everything. Right?
Yeah.
If this hadn't happened, then all this other great stuff that happened to me wouldn't have ever happened. So
yeah,
I have strong faith, and I believe that you just have to realize that you're not in control of everything all the time, and there's a higher power that is.
Yeah.
And once you accept that, everything else is easy.
Oh yeah.
Well, easier. Yeah, it's easier. So
yeah, and it's like, you know, that chaos theory thing they talk about, you know, it's like, and you know, I remember, like, you know, going through the separation with the, you know, the mother of my kids, and, you know, just like all that, man, if I wish I had never, you know, we never connected. I should have seen that would have been a bad, you know, from the start. But it's just like, but I got my kids out of it, you know, and they didn't ask, they didn't choose. And there's so many, you know, so many ways that my kids have helped make me a better person. It's like, all, like you said, all those little things, we didn't see it when we're in the middle of it, you know. No. But when you look back, there's gratitude. And now it's like I could get along with my ex, and, you know, it's in a much better place. And, you know, but I mean, that's just one example, you know. It's like, I'm a quick forgetter, and I'm calling my sponsor and some guys in the program all the time when I'm in the middle of my head and things aren't going my way that I want right now, you know, that I feel like, man, it's my time for something. But then they're like, well, dude, how many times were you, like, you know, like, how many times should I have been dead or something, you know, something happened, and here I am, you know. So yeah, I always like to remind myself of that, and you know, share that message for others as well. And then like, you know, looking back, like, I mean, kind of on the same similar thing, without changing, I guess, anything, because everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. But if there was something that maybe you could have made, you could go back and tell 12-year-old self something, any kind of, like, guidance or advice, what would it be?
Probably to be more patient.
Yeah.
As somebody who's always had a high drive, I'm very goal oriented, and it's great to have goals as long as they're within reason and they're reachable. And again, it goes back to what I said a moment ago about how little control you have over certain things. I really wanted to be a federal agent. I didn't seek out to be a police officer or lieutenant. It just happened that way because people in the federal law enforcement, a couple places I interviewed, decided not to hire me. So imagine if they had hired me. Then I wouldn't have my children. I wouldn't have a lot of the friends that I have. I wouldn't have a lot of the experiences. And so I would get frustrated when these things wouldn't go my way. So as a young John Stieben, I would tell my older self, hey, you need to just roll with the punches and accept that you're not always going to get what you want. And the energy that I wasted being frustrated or disappointed or upset about things that didn't go my way, it's energy I can never get back.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it wasted energy. Yeah.
I'm still doing that at 50, man. It's like, but yeah, I love having these conversations and these reminders. This is like, it's like I'm not making, there was something that went on earlier today with me and my kid, and I was just like, dude, why am I getting frustrated over this? This is not, there's just, it is what it is, and it'll be worked out, when it's supposed to be worked out, and yeah, always, that's another reason why I love having these conversations, because I need to hear a lot of this myself. I want to ask you a couple of the questions I normally ask my guests that I have on, before we get ready and wrap up. But what class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
A class on financial literacy, how to manage money.
Yep, that's the number one answer I get all the time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the reason I say that, Bill, is that when I was in the military, I didn't make very much money. And payday was once a month. Yep. And I never ran out of money. And guys that had higher salary than me would come to me and say, hey, can I borrow $20? I'm like, I'm not into loaning money to people because it's a great way to create a problem. But they say, you never run out of money. Why is that? I said, because I know how to manage it. And when you have very little, you got to be really good at it. And so my entire life, I've been really good at managing money. And I've also realized that I can always do better at it. When I met my wife, now that's a woman who knows money. I've learned so much from her in the last 13 years about money and how to grow it, how to conserve it. It's a valuable resource, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. So yes, the financial literacy is something that I would think should be mandatory in high school, because a lot of parents are not teaching their children how to manage money because they don't know themselves.
No, exactly. Yeah. And then that I get that answer, and like how to do your taxes. This is from like we were talking earlier. I don't just interview veterans on here. This is like, musicians, entertainers, all kinds of stuff. Everybody's just like, man, I wish somebody would, You see all these guys that you think are living baller lifestyles, and then the IRS gets a hold of them, and it's just like, look at what happens to them,
My parents taught me how to do my taxes in high school, so I was doing them before I even turned 18. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And there was no TurboTax back then, Bill. You know that.
Yeah. And then who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
The first person had to be my mother. May she rest in peace. She was an amazing human being who took very, very little. She grew up dirt poor in West Virginia and just made a great life and inspired my sister and I to always seek to do better. And so the first person would be my mother. My my friend Tony Castaneda, who I believe you've had on your podcast.
Oh yeah.
Tony and Chris and I went to Intel school together. That's how we all met back in Fort Huachuca, Arizona in 1989. And I tell you, when you look at Tony now, and if you knew him back in 1989, he is living proof that anything is possible. This was a guy who said, organized religion is a bunch of nonsense. I don't believe in it. And now he's an associate pastor at a church. God came into his life probably 15, 20 years ago. Coincidentally, same time his current and most lovely wife, Margarita, came in. And Tony has spent a life in service, mentoring people when he was in the military, and now in his job working as a Department of the Army civilian in the training element at Fort Huachuca. This is a guy who just serves his fellow man. And I have so much respect for him, given where he came from and where he is now. So he's inspired me a lot. The third person, that's tough. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah, the third one's always the toughest because it's like you don't want to leave somebody out, but you know.
Right.
I know going back, while you think about it, going back to Tony, you know, I remember my conversation with him, and when I first got into this podcast thing, this was before Chris got me hip to this particular program, StreamYard. You know, I that was a phone conversation that I recorded with Tony, but it was still such a powerful and uplifting conversation on the phone with him. And when I had Chris on, me and him met at like a Denny's or something, and I had the mics there and we did it, you know? Yeah, great guy, man.
Yeah, he has spent his life, like I said, serving other people and improving where he's at so he can do yet even more to help other people. His kindness and his servitude knows no boundaries. So I would say probably on the third person, it'd have to be my wife, Kathy. And she grew up without a father, worked multiple jobs at the time in Honolulu, which a very, very difficult place to live, and has just taken a life where very little was offered in the beginning, and just made a great life with it. And it's not just that; it's the way I see her treating other people. That's what inspires me about her. Is she is so kind, she is so generous, and she is so just understanding, and it makes me want to do better. Just like Tony makes me want to do better. My mom always wanted me to do better, and I never wanted to let her down. So, yeah. I mean, those are the three people that I would never want to let down at any cost. And they've all done things, and I think really it's about the way they live their lives is what inspires me. Because I'm a work in progress, Bill. We all are. And I'm always looking to improve and do better and to do things for other people. But I know I could always do better. Better is not good enough. You just got to keep doing and doing and doing. So, my mother, who we unfortunately lost 8 years ago, Tony Castaneda, and my wife, Kathy Benet. Those are the three.
Awesome. And then are there any causes or organizations that you support and encourage others to check out?
I do, actually. I am a huge supporter of Tunnels to Towers. It's one of the best charitable organizations there are. They have extremely low administrative costs, and you can get set up and go to t.org and set up an $11 a month Autodraft, either on a credit card or out of your bank account. So you don't even have to think about it. And these are people who help fallen firefighters, police officers, and veterans. Not only the ones who have unfortunately given the ultimate sacrifice, but their families, or if they're injured, they will help. They'll build them a home that's ADA compliant, and just the work that they do to me is amazing. And this was all set up because of 9/11. Frank Stiller's brother was a NY New York City fireman, and unfortunately, he was one of the 343 who died that day. So the work that Frank and his organization do is amazing.
Nice. And then going back to childhood, I always love asking this question because I'm still a kid at heart. That's what gets me in trouble a lot of times. But favorite toy as a child?
Definitely my Evel Knievel, the motorcycle with the action figure and the thing you wind up and then it goes. Yeah, I had the chopper, I had the regular motorcycle, I had the motor home. I loved that thing. And believe it or not, Bill, a couple years ago, I found a website where you could still buy those.
Wow.
Believe it or not, you could still buy those. And of course, I had mine in the 70s. But it was the most fun toy ever. I was always a daredevil. I liked to build ramps and jump things with my bicycle. And I broke my bike in half one time. My dad was not very happy about that. But I've always enjoyed that kind of stuff. And that was the best toy ever. The best. Yeah.
That is also a number one answer I've gotten. When I talk to guys around our age bracket, everybody remembers that Evel Knievel wind up figure, man. It's like, I'll get a lot of younger people to be like, I don't know, my PlayStation. I'm like, dude, that ain't a toy. Come on, man. Your imagination or something, And when I talk to guys in our age bracket, Evel Knievel was the man,
Well, I even had the action figure. You notice I'm not using the word doll here. The Steve Austin $6 Million Man action figure.
Oh,
you can look through the back of his head, and he had the bionic eye. That was a pretty cool one, too. And then, of course, like every young guy, I had the G.I. Joe action figure with the Kung Fu grip.
Oh, yeah. I still haven't got my Kung Fu grip down, though. I thought that came with military service, but,
It must be an Army thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And then, speaking of, our fellow veterans, any message you have for the men and women currently serving overseas?
Yeah, please be safe. We're all thinking about you. We want you to come home. Your willingness to serve does not go unappreciated or unnoticed. As somebody who's been there myself and had to endure that, I have the utmost respect for our men and women who do serve.
Awesome. John, I feel like I'm forgetting something. But I've come to the end of the program. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover real quick?
The only thing I would say, Bill, is that if there's a young person listening to this and they're really unsure whether they should join the military or not, then I encourage them to go talk to a recruiter and join the military. You will not regret it. And in some cases, like in mine, it literally jump-started my entire life. When I look at my life now, everything I have goes back to one thing, and that is my service in the U.S. Army. Everything I have that's good, everything that I've worked for comes from that. So if you're not sure, there's a lot of young people who are uncertain. Maybe they can't afford college, or they don't want to go like I didn't want to go. Join the military. You won't regret it. And you'll make some of the greatest friends you'll ever have. You'll see places that you never would have seen otherwise. But there is something about service that every person should know, understand, and experience, because it makes you a better person, just like you said about being a father.
Yeah.
Being in the military, I'm convinced, makes you a better person. That service, it's selfless, and it's just so valuable. It's something that nobody can give you. You have to earn it.
Yeah, amen. That was it. That's right. All right, John, man, I thank you so much for doing this with me and taking the time. That was, like I said, more reminders that I needed for myself in this conversation, and I'm glad that Chris connected us Before I let you go, what I like to do with my veterans too is, I like to have them do a promo ID for the show. But what I have them do is introduce themselves at the last rank they held in the military. So if you could do that for me and then just say, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Staff Sergeant John Stieben, United States Army. Today, you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Awesome. John, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time, and it was good talking to you and getting to know you, and I'm glad we're connected now. I'll definitely be keeping in touch with you.
Bill, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It's great to talk with you as well.
Take care.
All right.